David Fowley, I hate gimmicks, which is why tonight, as we discuss The Fugitive from 1993, Andrew Davis's, I'm going to say it, action thriller masterpiece starring Harrison Ford, I'm going to take a page from Dr. Richard Kimble, the man who's on the run in Chicago because people thought that he killed his wife. He's a fine, upstanding surgeon, and he's got this nice, great middle-aged Harrison Ford beard. But in order to protect himself from the authorities, he shaves it all off. He becomes Harrison Ford, I dare say. Like, he looks at the end of this movie, he looks like he does in like every other movie he was in the 90s. I think he went right from the Regarding Henry set to the latter half of this movie. That's my theory.
He
Anyway,
while he had the beard, he also managed to go to the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. So yeah.
well, there you go. And as I said, I abhor gimmicks, which is why I am going to shave off my beard using this razor and these accoutrements. But while I prep, David, tell me about, we've talked about a couple of Harrison Ford movies in the past. We talked about The Mosquito Coast last year, which was a
Yeah.
revelation to me. I love
Yeah.
that movie. I don't know which movie I love more because they're two different takes on Ford, but Harrison Ford's just the man. Let's face it. Tell me your first encounter with The Fugitive, either the Harrison Ford movie, the TV show that inspired it, and why do you love it?
So thank you once again for having me.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember very vividly. It was summer of '93. Okay, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
August '93, and it's the same month that Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven came out. So it was a
Oh,
great
that's
month.
right.
And I saw both of those movies at McClurg Court Theater downtown, Chicago. That is, and that was, the place to see a summer blockbuster hit. I think I saw Jurassic Park there, episode one. Um,
Jurassic Park episode 1?
yeah, not really. Um, if only. Technically, it was Jurassic Park episode one. So there we go.
Yeah,
Um,
counts.
I feel like you're going white face on me. Anyway,
It's weird because the camera's flipped, so I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm
we can
using
do,
my camera view as a mirror.
it's yeah, it's like we did like the pie in the face thing. Anyway, I'm shaving this coconut cream off. Um,
It's
yeah,
blue. It matches my shirt.
so I was familiar with the show, um, probably from you go through a period growing up in the '80s, or at least I did, where the TV's your babysitter, and even during the day and stuff, and so there would be reruns, of course, of like Twilight Zone. I dug all these black and white shows, from the kind of like the traditional Andy Griffith, Father Knows Best, Leave It to
Leave It
Beaver,
to
and
Beaver, yes.
and then there was the Fugitive, and and I think I got into it because, and I don't know how or who told me, but I was really into the Incredible Hulk, which is basically the Fugitive,
Yeah, I never thought of it
because
that way.
because Mr. McGee is always after uh, David Banner, not Bruce Banner, um, and Sam Gerard is always after um, Richard Kimble, played by David Jansen. So I think that around that time, probably late '70s, early '80s, I was just watching reruns of The Fugitive, and yeah, I dug it. It was cool because it was just like, what's funny is like he was just each episode he was just like helping out people, which was what Bill Bixby's David Banner was trying to do
And
until he
the
could.
A-Team, when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Except he was
yeah,
like a
yeah.
gang of people on the
Right, right,
run
right,
trying
right,
to
right.
help people, but with like smashing violence in that giant van. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What the Hulk had going for it is that awesome theme song at the end of each episode. Dun, 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 dun. Anyways, so when the Fugitive came out, I'm like, I thought it was really kind of brilliant timing, just because everybody knew Harrison Ford, of course, but not enough people knew about the movie, or I'm sorry, the TV show, The Fugitive, around that time, '93. And so I was like, oh, this could be really interesting, but it could also be really bad, because how do you compile all these seasons into one movie. Well, you don't, and that's what was made the movie great. Now, for those in the know, um, there was a lot of improvisation in this movie. There was a lot of unscripted stuff in this movie. There was a lot of rewrites in this movie. This movie was the idea of a Fugitive adaptation was in development for at least 5 years before '92 when it was filmed. So you know, I think I think it was it Arnold? Is it Arnold Copelson was the producer? He was the one who was really trying to get it off the ground for years. Let me go to see what it says here. And it took a while to get a good script. Yeah, Arnold Copelson and Peter McGregor Scott co-produced this movie. And the writers, David Toohey and Jeb Stewart. Toohey came up mainly with the story, but I think and started the screenplay, but Toohey but Jeb Stewart wound up finishing it. And he did the screenplay for Die Hard, so and well, a bunch of other things. But
That I did not know that, but that makes a lot of sense.
oh, totally. And
The lone kind of everyman who gets drawn into
yep,
this chaotic world. But yeah,
yeah,
wow.
no, it's very fitting, and it's a weird the script went through so many things because at one point they were thinking, oh, summer blockbuster, he's got to have a love interest, and that idea right there is just stupid because he's mourning his wife who got murdered. Why would he have a love interest while he's on the run, while he's trying to, figure out who killed his wife? And I think like that's why Julianne Moore got like, if you look at the billing, she's like second billing or third after Tommy Lee Jones. And so, when I was rewatching that, I was like, okay, well, why is that? I did a little research, and they actually filmed scenes with Ford and Moore, not like intimate scenes or anything, but just more screen time so they could develop something, which is just totally
And
stupid.
justify that billing, yeah.
Yeah. I remember when '93 was around the time I started kind of discovering Julianne Moore because I had seen her in Shortcuts and this Todd Haynes movie Safe, and I was like, oh wow, she's like barely in this movie at the end there. And of course, Jane Lynch plays one of the doctors. Um, it's just it's very interesting now that you like go back and see all these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, this movie is like full of it's character actor central.
Oh, totally.
I mean, you've got Dan Roebuck.
Yep.
I can't remember the actress's name, but do you ever watch that show Psych?
Yeah. Yeah.
The mayor from or not the mayor, the chief of police from that show is in this movie for like a scene. I think her name was Betty.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And L. Scott Caldwell, who was in a lot of things. She played part of. She was in part of Tommy Jones' team.
The kid, the rookie kid who gets his ears, like his
Yep.
hearing blown out. He was with Tommy Lee Jones in Under Siege, the other Andrew Davis
That's
movie
right.
from the year before, which is
That's right.
crazy.
And I mean, this is the third Tommy Lee Jones movie that um, Andrew Davis collaborated with him on, and the first
What was
one
the
was
other?
Gene Hackman, and him was in. They were in The Package, also filmed in Chicago, and then
Hmm.
Under Siege. Uh, what's odd is, and I can't imagine this happening, but it's kind of funny. It's like Harrison Ford was interested in The Fugitive because he thought like that Under Siege was such a good movie. I'm like, okay. I thought Andy Davis did a great job, and they're both Chicago guys, so it's like, all right, let's do this movie. And it was Andy Davis's idea to have the movie set in Chicago because he was familiar with it because he grew up in Chicago, and it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, out of all the big cities in the Midwest, I mean, not to say this because this is where we live, but I mean, Chicago is just a perfect setting for this. Now, that being said, even in '93 when I saw this, I have always been a big stickler for how Chicago and Illinois, I guess, is represented in the movies. I just always thought it was funny. It's like, okay, you would imagine that he gets sentenced for the murder of his wife. You'd imagine that he'd be going to like Stateville, or even if he went somewhere downstate, like you could clearly tell, okay, where would this dam be? Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
and also even the small town. Now it's filmed. There's some parts filmed in, I think, Kentucky, but mostly North Carolina, northern North Carolina, just below the Smokies. So I'm like, okay, they said that that even when Ford was contacting Nichols when he goes back into the city, he's like, "Where are you? I'll come get you." And he's like, "St. Louis," and hangs up. So it's like, okay, maybe the prison was somewhere around St. Louis. Who knows? But
Well,
obviously,
I think he was just making up a smokescreen to throw him
sure.
off,
Oh yeah, of
right?
course.
In case
But
he was being tapped or something. Yeah.
but you would think like if he did escape, from prison or from the bus, that he would still be somewhere downstate, and nobody would think that he would come back to the city where the crime happened. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you just kind of, as a Chicagoan, as a person who lives in a land of Lincoln, you just kind of got to gloss over these things. Yeah, I mean, I think like the production design is pretty amazing. The practical stunts, they're that was a real train and that was a real bus. What's odd is how the bus it is a little silly when you think about it. It's like let's back up a little bit, because Kimble gets the whole trial and the investigation is a little bizarre. Like it all happens so quick. In fact, the first 15 minutes of the movie, there's still, and now it is spread out, but there's still opening credits going on.
Yeah.
It's
And it's
slow
jarring because they do disappear after a while,
after a while, and then they come back.
and then
It's
they
like,
pop
wait,
back. I'm
what?
like, "Wait,
Okay.
oh, the
Uh,
director of
oh
photography."
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And throughout the movie, we're getting flashbacks of bearded Ford wrestling the one-armed man. Um, and so we kind of go back to that scene. The one-armed man's played by Andreas Katsulas, who was also the bad guy on Someone to Watch Over Me by Ridley Scott. Um, Ridley Scott, Blade Runner, full circle. Anyway, yeah. So so it's kind of funny because like that whole investigation was really quick. You're guilty. You're on the bus. Um, I One thing I was reminded of is that whole interrogation scene with the two cops, the very Chicago two cops, was improvised. It wasn't in the script.
And but it was very well
Yeah.
done. One of my big contentions with this movie, and I don't have many big contentions, but
Hmm.
the one guy with the huge glasses, and he had like he was like the Chicago Bears super fan accent
Well,
guy.
I
He's like,
mean,
"What color were his eyes?
you could have
What color was his hair?"
your big contention, but at the time he was actually this was a moonlighting gig. He was actually a Chicago cop.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But I can't have that guy having like this really cool introduction scene where he's interrogating Ford,
Hmm.
because it is kind of surreal because you hear his voice is almost in the background as Ford is like losing his mind.
Hmm.
And he's like so callous, like what color was his eyes? What color was his hair? Like
Yeah.
he doesn't really care. He thinks Ford is guilty.
Yeah. Of course.
But to have him pop up later in the movie is like he's supposed to think he's the badass. Like, if you see Dr. Kimble, you shoot him down on sight. I'm like, no, you gotta get a Dennis Franz, for that role.
Speaking of authenticity, that would have been great. Thinking of authenticity, you also have some like local Chicago reporters. You got John Bulldog Drummond reporting outside of Kimball's apartment, and
You have Lester Holt at
later
the
on you
end in
have
the press
Lester
corps.
Holt. Yeah, later on you have Lester Holt and who's the other guy? Hang on, I got it somewhere here. Yes, you had Lester Holt and another one, Jay Levine, local Chicago newscaster. It's kind of cool. Um, so I feel like this was good at the time for like Chicago filmmaking, for local actors, for local newsmen, and local cops. But yeah, Ron Dean was also the cop there, and he's played so many Chicago guys over
Well,
the years.
he was in The Dark Knight, right? Where
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
the
yeah,
guy that Ledger pushes through the
yeah,
door into the party. Yeah.
yeah. And he was, I think he was one of the dads in the Breakfast Club, and he was in Andy Davis's Above the Law with Steven Seagal, also in Chicago. Yeah, you know.
Wait, was Above the Law the one where they're driving and there's palm trees in the background? Or was that a
Could
different one?
be.
Because that was the Chicago set one. I
I,
remember seeing that on Siskel and Ebert. Wow.
oh gosh, that movie. Oh yeah, and gosh, Pam Grier was in that. Henry Silva. But yeah, it's. I think like for those in the know, I mean, Andrew Davis. We know that he's always been really good about making movies in Chicago. There was Chain Reaction with Keanu Reeves, Morgan Freeman. Um, but yeah, I think I think the great thing about that interview scene is that it is improvised, and Ford did not know the questions that were to be asked, and they was just like, "Go ahead, ask him." Um, and I'm impressed that you got through that. I mean, was your hair not that thick, or because I cannot do that with this. I need to start off with electric and then go blade. But
Wasn't that
man,
thick. It was mostly a Van Dyke, but I've not been fully clean shaven in probably half a decade, I don't think.
you're
This
gonna
is weird.
keep the Wolverine lamb chops and
Oh, of course. No,
yeah.
no, these are 90210 Dylan McKay
Jeez.
sideburns. Yeah.
Luke Perry, gosh.
Hell yeah.
I think
R.I.P.
that's
baby.
I think that's when people started like wearing longer sideburns is because of 90s.
Fun fact, when
Mhm.
that show came out, I did not quite have the facial hair to grow out
The
the for
ability.
sideburns. Right, so but I wanted them, so I grew my hair out, and I would trim it around the ears just so I could have long sideburns and then paste them down to the side of my face using Ultra Hold hair gel.
So it's kind of like a comb over thing going on.
It was a sideburn comb over, exactly, David, I love it.
So, anyways, at some point, Kimble buys hair dye, and it is there's. I mean, his escape. Like, okay, he does get injured, and he has to like sew himself up in a hospital. But he's a doctor; he can do that, right? And that's where he shoots himself in the butt. With the what do you call it, antibiotic or something. Um, but I I did think it was funny, and this was in one of the videos I sent you. He steals an ambulance, the most conspicuous vehicle you could steal, and then Tommy Lee Jones is immediately in a helicopter. He's like, "There he is! Let's get around him! Come on!" You know.
Well, yeah,
Um,
but there's a proud tradition of people trying to escape in Illinois and stealing ambulances, aka Michael Myers and his trip from Haddonfield or to
see,
Haddonfield.
maybe Kimble was thinking about that. Michael Myers can do it, so can I. Let's get away with this as well. But I was funny. It was I was watching this movie, and my daughter kind of came into the room, and I'm like, hey, hold on, watch this. This is the movie that I wanted to watch with you. And she's like, okay. She's looking at, and she's like, is that Harrison Ford? He's so young there. I'm like, and as a scene, the classic scene. I didn't kill my wife. I don't care. And she's like, he would have never survived that. And I found out and doing a little reading up on it. It was I think they used like 6 or 7 dummies when they flopped off when he did it. Peter Pan off the ledge.
I you know, I think I had not watched this movie in a long time. It might have
Mhm.
been 15 years or more. Um, for some reason in my head canon, I justified that because I think I made up a line where someone had said, "How could he have survived that?" And someone pulls up, "Oh, he was like a championship diver in school." That that line I'm sure is nowhere in the movie, but in my head, that's how I pulled it
That would
off.
have been awesome when they were like, weren't they flipping through like old pictures? Like it was either a yearbook or something, and they have like a picture of Ford in college. It would have been great, like most likely to become Olympic diver or something. Um,
Well, the thing I noticed, that stood out to me was that it was clearly, someone's yearbook that just pasted a picture of Harrison Ford in.
oh, it was
It was
yeah.
it was a quick shot, but it's like everybody else on the page had, like, the close
Mhm.
up of their face, and his is, like, more of a bust and, like, the suit and tie is, like, really tiny. I'm like, "What
Yeah,
is this?"
that was his photo from Ripon College in Wisconsin. Um, so the other thing too is he's on the run. He I would say apart from like the injury on the side, everything is pretty much going good for him when he's on the run, right? I mean, it isn't. There's some anxious moments, but at no point is his. I'm not going to say at no point is his life in danger because he did do the Peter Pan off there, but he survived, and he made a blanket full of leaves one night where he's dreaming about his dead wife, um, and then he follows the river into town, and lo and behold, a tow truck driver parks and drops off his overalls. Oh, got a new
That's
pair of
exactly how Michael Myers did it
dry
too. Yeah,
clothes. So
except he killed the tow truck driver, but yes.
that's right. Oh my gosh, that would have been amazing. That would have been great if like you have a scene where the tow truck driver, say that fast, comes, parks a car, drops the onesie, and Ford's Kimble is on his way up, and all of a sudden, Michael Myers comes and takes it away. It's like, oh, jeez, had my chance. But yeah, what's funny too is that scene when he is shaving. It's in the hospital room of this old guy who's kind of like in a neck brace and pretty much kind of comatose, and he's the luckiest guy. I mean, he's got all these items. Yeah, he found some hair dye somewhere, but he's able to take time to shave. He's able to while he's on the run, and he gets like a whole scrambled eggs and toast and eats
Well,
it.
yeah, because he took the guy's food. I
I
mean,
know. I mean, it's just so coincidental. It's like he's just in time for serving time, and
well, that's the thing is he is very fortunate, but a lot of what he does is it within the system that he works in professionally.
sure. So he
He knows,
knows. Yeah.
yeah, he knows like when it's feeding time. He probably knows what
Mhm.
kind of patients to go,
Right. Right.
into his room to take some time to clean
He's
himself up.
looking. He's looking at the chart. Oh, this guy's in a coma. He's not going to miss anything. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's true. He does use his strength and knowledge in his mental. He does his mental gymnastics and gets his way in and out of situations.
But what
Um,
I love is that
yeah.
he is a very solitary figure throughout this movie. He doesn't have anybody like a sidekick to monologue off of. We just see
Well,
him doing his
yeah,
thing, right?
and
For the
that's
most part.
and that's what's so smart about the script is that I think the writers realize that like, okay, we need something to offset that, and that's why you had Timely Jones and his crew. Now, I would say that if it was just Timely Jones, Sam Gerard, it would only be two stories of two solitary characters in one story. But the fact that um Jones is working off his team makes the movie to me. The way when I say working off, he's got this back and forth banter with all these guys, and some of them are newbies, some of them are veterans. You got Joe Pantoliano, um, and it just like so many lines that were improvised. The whole thing with the chocolate donut. Think me up a coffee and a chocolate donut with the sprinkles. That was improvised. I think in the line it was just like in the script it was just like get me coffee. But he was like, I'm thinking, well, think me up a coffee. You know, but just all those things, and yeah, that really kind of offset this kind of solitary story of Ford that we're following. And it's interesting, but I mean, you'll have to admit that like the overall conspiracy that's being uncovered isn't all that interesting. I mean, it's a big pharma conspiracy thing and switching the samples, and it's like, you know, and
Well, I mean, look, it's in 1993, I could see it not being very interesting, but
yeah,
today, I mean, when you look at there's alternately an over trust on big pharma and a high skepticism of big pharma because of things that have happened in the last couple
sure,
of years. And in terms of corporate conspiracies, I think it was just this week you had the second Boeing Airlines whistleblower uh, mysteriously die right before they were supposed to testify. So yeah, I'm thinking, I'm
it's
watching The
odd.
Fugitive now, and I'm thinking this is very prescient. I mean, yeah, there's the realm of
Well,
conspiracy theory and
yeah,
everything, but it doesn't feel far fetched considering what's in the headlines.
yeah, it was also very timely for the early '90s. I mean, you had The Firm, Pelican Brief, and all these, kind of, all these kind of legal movies based off of books and stuff, and here we have this based off a TV show. Now, trying to think, but I can't think of anything like in the late '80s or early '90s where um, a movie was adapting a TV show this well. In fact, I would go on record saying this is probably the only good movie TV adaptation. But
It's it's way too late for me to in the day for me to think of a counterexample,
right,
but you
right.
might be right. Now, here's the thing. I agree, and I think it's also just startling that the idea that you could say, "Hey, we want to dust off this franchise because there's some name recognition and make a big screen feature film, but still have this be in the era before everything was a mega franchise."
Oh
Because
yeah.
this is a one and done movie. There's no indication at the end of like, "Oh,
Well,
Kimble's still running." What?
yeah.
Tell me.
U.S.
Send them
Marshals.
this. That doesn't count. I never watched US Marshals. Was that any good?
I remember seeing scenes of it. I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing of it. The whole way through. I couldn't get on board with Snipes' character. It was just like so silly. It's comical. It's actually Jones is Sam Gerard. We get to see him in the opening in a giant like fast food chicken outfit. Yeah, like a mascot, like a fried chicken outfit.
You're
It's
I'm
worth it
never
just for
watching
that.
this movie.
No, it's
I'm
worth it
never
just for
watching
that.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Um, but yeah,
But
interest.
I guess my point
Yeah,
is like it doesn't feel I can understand US Marshals becoming a thing a
hmm
year or 2 later because like The Fugitive was this massive
and he won an
success and
Oscar
people
for it.
right. So it's
Yeah,
like, "Hey, let's capitalize, let's do something with it."
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not like the people at Warner Brothers were like, "Okay, we're gonna have Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, and it's gonna be a 3-picture deal, and, he's set up in the first movie, and he's on the run until the 3rd one, and
Well,
then we'll
yeah.
do spinoffs."
Well, that was one of the other things that Ford agreed to do the movie if it was just a one and done. Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, come on.
The
I
the
mean, for studios, for the producers, I'm sure they would think, but what do you mean? The show had 7 seasons or whatever. It's like, no, no. I'm about to do a Jack Ryan. I'm about to no, 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 no. You know,
the the thing that I mean, first of all, I don't think I realized how much improvisation was in this movie. So when you tell me, or when I find out that the interrogation scene was improvised, I think that's why I responded to Ford's performance uh, so intensely this time
hmm
around because he looks shaken. He's like
yeah.
he looks like he's struggling to find the words and figure out what's going on. It's probably because he's assessing in the moment, okay, what would my character do and how do I react? And I'm upset and all this other stuff. And these people are accusing me. I can't believe what's going on. It's very moving. And the whole bit with him struggling with the one-armed man, his wife crawling to the phone and dying and calling out his name that last time,
Richard.
the scene yeah, the scene later on in the hospital where he saves that little kid
Yeah.
on the gurney. This is the first time I've really watched, I think, The Fugitive as an adult. It came out when I was a teenager. I thought, "Oh, it's cool. It's got some cool effects, and I like Tommy Lee Jones. He's crazy, and Harrison Ford's always great." But watching it now, I realize this is a movie about, like, adults with careers and lives and senses of duty. I watched and I'm talking about this next week. I don't know if you'll be on the show. Talking about The Fall Guy next week.
Okay.
I saw that last night, and
Oh
as I
boy.
recall, there are 2 references to The Fugitive in The Fall Guy.
Huh.
Watching The Fugitive today, I had a Will Smith moment regarding The Fall Guy. I'm like, "You keep The Fugitive out of your damn mouth because
I was gonna say, who did
this."
you slap?
I slapped everyone involved in, with The Fall Guy. I think, hot take, I think The Fall Guy is one of the worst movies of the year, especially especially in comparison to The Fugitive, because looking at that Siskel and Ebert segment that you switched me
Mhm,
on to, it's cool watching them talk for 5 minutes about it.
mhm,
They really put it into context, like, this is a summer blockbuster thriller,
mhm.
but it's a movie where there are jokes, but they're incidental, they're like banter between, Jones's crew,
Mhm.
or, some witticism he might come up with. It's not jokey. I don't get the feeling that I'm watching a bunch of like developmentally arrested man children. We're talking about a professional surgeon. We're talking about a U.S. Marshal, and they're chasing each other, and it's like a statewide manhunt for this guy. Whereas I watch Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, two performers that I really like, ostensibly playing adults, but in this thing where the entire movie is just like references to other movies and the action stopping every 10 minutes so they can have an 8-minute conversation about a relationship that we don't really have context for. This movie is 4 minutes longer than The Fall Guy, but it feels about 7 hours shorter than The Fall Guy.
Wow. Yeah, that's about right. Maybe I could be there for that. Yeah. So I think like over the years, like I mean, this is probably, let me think, probably Ford's best movie of the 90s. Yeah.
Because what else was he was
I
doing?
mean,
Jack
he was
Ryan.
in
He
the
was
two Jack Ryans. He was in like Regarding Henry, as you mentioned, 6 Days, 7 Nights. Oof. Um, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there was those. And then I think wasn't The Devil's Own in the 90s too?
yeah,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
97, I think.
yeah. Wow. Um, yeah, I mean, I think, gosh, this is just it's a smart, mature thriller. Um, and it earns the kind of the third act climactic kind of like requisite kind of battle. Kind of.
It's funny. I mean,
It is funny.
I buy it because it's exciting and you really want this guy Nichols to get his comeuppance. For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, that means you haven't watched The Fugitive, which why are you watching a podcast
Right,
about The Fugitive? And how have you not seen The Fugitive yet? But so this guy Nichols was a doctor who
Colleague.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, a colleague who was being essentially paid by this pharmaceutical company to help develop this miracle liver drug. And they got it passed. And they're going to make $1 billion out of it. The problem is Nichols took the research that Kimble, Ford's character, had submitted regarding this stuff. Hey, this actually does lots of damage to the liver. We cannot put this out on market. It would be
Right.
irresponsible. Nichols took the research, swapped out the samples
Switch
to
the
make it look like,
samples.
right. You just moved the tombstones, to make it look like, oh, it's a perfectly safe and effective drug, and we can put it out there. And then when Kimble was an inconvenience, they sent the one-armed man to do the assassination, and turns out the wife was there, I guess. I don't think we ever got an answer to like, why Helen? You know, I think that's
What's funny too is like they knew he was at a dinner, and then he was called to surgery. So his wife goes home, and that means that the one-armed man was just like sitting there in the closet waiting for either of them. And I don't know. I guess when Kimble didn't show up, he's like, "Well, I'm here. I guess I'll kill a wife." You know.
okay, David. I like to. I know you sent me a video, a Cinema Sins video. It's like 20. Why The Fugitive sucks in 20 minutes. The
No,
video's
it's
in
not why it
21 and a
sucks.
half minutes. It's like okay, all the problems with The Fugitive and stuff.
It's
I scrubbed
funny
through it.
though.
It is. But I'm saying yes, you can pick apart this movie till the cows come home. The
It's
one
still
thing was like
great.
when he was running out the building and the guard like reached over the desk to grab him. Like, why didn't he step out? Because the guy was running right past him. Anyway,
That was funny though. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is just like they're not even sins. They're just funny. But
I
yeah, I
will
mean,
say the one sin I pointed, I didn't watch the whole 20-minute video. I scrubbed through it, but the one thing that I saw later in the movie, there's a newscast of like Richard Kimball's in Chicago and he's back and there's a manhunt. They show the picture of the trial
right.
and they show the reaction shot of when the judge slams the gavel. Like, okay, that's from the movie. There's no
How did you
news
get
camera
that?
like at the judge's bench, like filming his
Let's
reaction.
film this. And it's like that again. It's like let's how. I mean, I guess it's not like he was a famous local doctor. I mean, I guess just because it's like it's a murder, the doctor killed his wife. That's the biggest thing, Um, I don't know why does it make such big headlines? Because it's in a movie. Yeah,
It's probably because of the brutal killing, and he maintained
sure,
it's a very
sure.
sexy story because he maintains
Yeah,
his innocence, but all signs are point to, yeah, he bashed her head in, and
right, right.
oh,
And
and
but it's funny because there's really no other Chicago detective like doubting anything or working another angle until the U.S. Marshal comes in. You know, there's
mm.
there's something hinky here. You know what? I don't want you using that word, but
Now, also, was Gerard and his team, were they called in because of the train?
yeah, because of escaped U.S. Marshals are called in when there's escaped fugitives, when there's escaped prisoners.
Okay, I
Um,
wasn't quite sure how
yeah,
like, if that was, if there was
yeah,
some other reason they were
and
involved
that's
in this.
and that's the thing is, see if you watch the sequel, you know this, Ian. Wesley Snipes is a fugitive on the run, and he's so U.S.
He
Marshals are called
escapes
in.
on the plane and becomes passenger 57.
Kind of is actually.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, um, but the whole thing with Nichols, and Nichols was played by Richard Jordan. He filled some scenes there, but he developed a brain tumor and shortly died prior to The Fugitive being released, sadly. So he was recast by Yeroon Krabbe. I had to practice that because, Dutch actor, us Americans would say Jerome Crab, but it's Yeroon Krabbe. And when I saw this, I was like, "Oh, where's this villain from the Living Daylights been?" Because that was at the time that was probably the movie that I've seen him in before. Um, he was good. I mean, it was very even like in interviews I saw with him is like he was called up. He showed up. He went to wardrobe and then was like given the script. So it was very on the fly. Like,
And it was improv.
yeah, I mean it was filmed in like 70 something days, and they had a hard release date of August 93. I don't know why, but that's what Warner Brothers did. And I think that it kind of this looseness of everything really kind of worked in the film's benefit because it for one thing, although the movie is very structured, it doesn't feel very stiff. It's very loose and organic. I think um, that scene that you mentioned when Kimble helps out that little boy Joel. Um, I love how I wanted to, I would love to see like more scenes where he's just showing up at hospitals reading charts and no, this guy needs this. How did this guy know that? But no, you need to operate here. But so he saved the boy's life, and I love that. And you probably noticed that watching it now as an adult that just this camera is on Kimble, just like proud that he actually got to do that and help out the boy. Like it's like a little smirk,
Well,
it's cool.
yeah, and but what I was talking about before, and I don't think I
Mm,
quite finished my point, is watching this movie as an adult and as a dad, you really get to feel you get the sense that Harrison Ford, he's not a superhero, he's just a doctor, and he's
mm,
like this noble kind of doctor who likes to work on people and help people and do good things. He's at a charity event when we first meet him. He's like kind of like the Bruce Wayne of Chicago or something,
right,
but he's a
right.
surgeon, right? He loves his wife, he's got a great relationship. So you just get the feeling that he's a good person,
Mm,
and everyone thinks that he's a killer. And so he just wants to keep on doing the only thing that he knows how to do, which is survive and help people. What
and
I
it,
loved is
yeah,
that I hadn't really picked up on this, is that he doesn't decide to go after the one-armed man until waking up in that pile of leaves after surviving the train
mm,
crash and all that,
mm,
right?
mm,
Because he has that dream of his wife, and then he has that dream of, "You find this man," of him, like, in the interrogation room,
yeah.
and he's like, "You know what?
That's
I'm
what I'm
free
gonna do.
now." Yeah, and it's just but again, he doesn't wander into town and tell somebody, "I'm gonna go on a mission of vengeance and clear my name." He just does it. He gets right to the point and he
Yeah.
does it.
I appreciate the fact that, and we do gather that like at no point is he telling anybody else in the movie like I'm going to clear my name. It's more about his silent mission of finding, bringing to justice the killer of his wife. There is that there's a lot of great Chicago scenes, and what I appreciate about how Davis shoots Chicago, apart from, there is the Picasso there, but in the we got to talk about the Irish Day, St. Patrick's Day parade, um, which is a better use of it than in the parade that we saw in Ferris Bueller. But um, of course, that was unscripted too. But I do like certain locations, like when they track down the other escapee.
Oh yeah.
The big black guy.
I got you, man.
I know. Yep. I don't bargain. And then the scene when on the south side, when they're in that they go in the police kind of raid the apartment that he's in, where he has this little basement apartment that he's renting out from this Polish lady, and her son is getting into I don't know, it was like drugs.
He's selling drugs to 12-year-old girls.
Yeah, there you go. It's awesome. It's awesome. But you feel that anxiety because he thinks the police are coming for them. And I remember when I first saw that, and I'm like, whoa, what's going to happen? Now he's going to get captured, but no. And I like the way that's filmed because you actually feel it.
That was almost a riff, intentionally or not, but on the Silence of the Lambs, the big climactic thing where the cops you think they're coming to her aid, but they're raiding a completely different house. Also, I got to say, the one moment where I cringed and it hurt to watch this movie, I can forgive it because it's a summer blockbuster, but it's a moment the movie does not deserve this moment. When Kimble finally confronts the one-armed man on the train. Another character actor, Neil Flynn from the sitcom The Middle. He's like 20 years old in this movie, and he's the CTA cop that gets involved in this. Everybody's in this movie. Beats the crap out of the one-armed man, handcuffs him to the train so he can be arrested later, and he says, "You missed your stop." I'm like, oh, no.
And it was funny, out of all the lines that like Jones and Ford like rewrote a lot of lines, it's like, all right. Oh, we forgot he was also in Air Force One, like Get Off My Plane in the 90s. So that was like, you missed your stop, get off my plane,
get off my train.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. And I think Neil, would you say Neil Flynn, the actor? That's his name? He was in that show, I think he was in Scrubs too. But I don't know.
He's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. But eventually in that third, the subway scene's interesting too, because movies always get the subway train stops, even especially in the loop. They get it a little, it's a little hinky. But for the most part, Davis does a good job, I think, at utilizing like the Chicago mise en scène without tourist trademarks, for the most part.
They're not hanging off the Sears Tower or anything like that. It's pretty good. I mean, they got the Chicago Hilton in there, but I do think it was a missed opportunity to have that fight happen on the Brown line, because then the cop could have come out afterwards saying, "I got Kimble on Kimble."
Sorry. That would have been perfect. Or there's a moment where you see the train. There's an aerial shot of the train going by the Harrison Hotel downtown, and it's on its way to Kimble. It's the Kimble Brown line.
And then there was some other. Oh, I think it was in the Siskel and Ebert review. They mentioned Ford making his escape. I just thought of the Ford Escape. Also, another possibly shared universe with Adventures in Babysitting, which also took place in Chicago.
Yeah.
You remember that movie?
Yeah.
There's that scene where they get on the L train, and the kids get caught between the two Chicago gangs. The Hispanic gang leader was the guy sitting on the train across from Ford reading the Sun-Times, who went and tipped him off to the cop.
That's right.
I like to think that was like, okay, this is, it's like 8 years later, the guy's turned his life around. He got out of crime. Still riding the train.
He's still riding the train. Yeah, this was like around the same time Kathleen Turner was in VI Warshawski. It was also filmed in Chicago. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. Um, yeah, it's a great trivia bit there. Um, yeah, James Newton Howard did the score. I thought that was like, a propulsive score, but also had a good balance to it. It didn't feel like, overbearing in any way or trying to like be a John Williams thing. It felt like very kind of a very early 90s, kind of action thriller type thing. That was, I enjoyed it. Um,
Yeah, they also sidestepped, speaking of propulsion, these movies tend to have like they race towards the big climax, and usually you've got the main villain like falling off a building or getting
mhm.
thrown into a helicopter blade or something. Both the antagonists in this movie survive, strangely enough.
It
There's
is
no
odd.
Die Hard moment where, Nichols rises up and takes aim and,
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones shoots him or something like that. Even the one-armed man, the guy who killed Helen,
Right.
is allowed to live.
I felt bad too, like at the end during that. Isn't it like a laundry room hotel chase in I think the Chicago, is
The
it
Hilton, yeah.
The Hilton? Yeah. There's a kind of like a cat and mouse chase in the laundry room or something, or boiler room, and
Mhm.
poor Joey Pants gets conked in the head by that thing.
That okay. That was really well shot
It
because
was.
it wasn't filmed in, like, dramatic action
It
movie thing where it goes flying at his
was
head.
just
It
quick.
feels like it was quick, but it felt like it just got enough momentum. It's this heavy beam, it just knocks him out. Like,
Yeah,
it hurt watching that. That was the
it
second
did.
time I cringed, but for a good reason.
And I also like too is, like I said, we see these two stories. We see Gerard's team investigating this, and we see, Ford investigating, his own, trying to get to the bottom of his wife's murder. I really like the gradual kind of awareness that um, Jones Gerard has, and it's probably one of the reasons why he won the Oscars, because he's so good in this. But it dawns on him that Kimble's innocent. He learns, eventually that, this isn't our guy, and maybe Kimble, maybe they find out, they realize what Kimble's doing. Like, why would he come back here? Why would he? They when they find him in the when they well, he's not in his apartment, but what they find, these remnants in an apartment. He's making an ID and doing all this stuff, and he's clearly trying to get to the bottom of it. And I like the fact that the way Jones plays Gerard, like kind of coming to this realization. Because at the end, the one scene that Ford and Jones have, I think, is in the back of the police car or something like. Here, let
There's
me.
your love story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here, let me untie the. Let me unlock the handcuffs, and yeah. You okay? You need anything? Um, but yeah,
I I was waiting for him to say, "I care," or
I
something like
thought you
that,
didn't
but
care. I
yeah.
know. Um, yeah.
But,
But yeah,
well, the thing is, what I liked about the Gerard character, the way he was written and certainly the way he was performed, but, it doesn't when he says, "I don't care," you do get that feeling like the only thing he gives a crap about is bringing in his man.
yeah,
Now, as he learns that Kimble is innocent, I think that I don't know that that really affects his job. Are there any situations that whether or not he thought he was guilty or innocent, you think he would have acted differently throughout the course of the film? The only thing I can think of is he gradually starts to uncover at the same time Kimble does the
yeah.
conspiracy with McGregor Pharmaceuticals, but I don't think that necessarily affects the way he would deal with Kimble. If anything, he might say, when I'm done with this Kimble case, I got some friends over at the DOJ or the FDA who might be interested to know about this hinkiness going on.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
with
yeah,
the
I can refer
pharmaceuticals.
this case. This is interesting, but I've still just got to get this guy. I don't care if he did it or not.
Well, I think at some point it turned into like, I I don't want to capture him. I want to prevent him from doing himself more damage. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah.
Because especially towards the end in that kind of chase scene, it's like I think Gerard's more interested in preventing Kimball from doing more damage, to his status, let's say, um, and that's. it's good directing, and crazy enough, there's 6 editors in this movie.
I was gonna mention
I don't
that. That was the first
understand
note
that.
I took on this movie.
I'm like, what the heck? But it's the first time, like, and it won. Well, it didn't. I mean, it won some Oscars, but that was the first time in Oscar history that editors, um 6 editors were nominated for best editing. Crazy. Um,
Did they win?
I don't think they won, but you
Damn
know.
it.
And of course, we said Gerard won. Ford was nominated for a Golden Globe, but lost to Tom Hanks, Philadelphia. Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's understandable. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think you know, it's just a really good, it's really good material. You know, it's one of those movies where you just go with, and you shouldn't think too hard about it, or you'll find sins.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing. I like to think, and I'm sure you can attest to this,
Hmm.
alert to things
Hmm.
and prone to nitpick. But aside from a less than a handful of details, I didn't pick up on any like major flaws or problems. I just don't think they're really flaws or problems. They're nitpicks. Like you
Yeah,
can watch this movie. I think it works if you're thinking about it. It also works if you turn off your brain. But you don't have to. It's
but
for what it is. It's a
yeah,
very smart movie.
but if we go back to the summer of '93, none of us were thinking about this stuff. None of us were thinking about flaws because we were invested in the movie. We were following these characters, and they won us over. The script won us over, the directing, the performances, of course. Um, yeah, it's just, and I like that. They have, of course, there's humorous moments with, uh, mostly with Gerard and his crew. But I like that scene when they're in the hospital and they're just outside the, what do you call it, the prosthetics department, which I didn't even know some hospitals have those departments, but I thought that would be like, I mean, maybe back then, but it's just funny. It's like, why else would he be in the hospital? And all of a sudden, this one armed patient goes through. It's like, and it's just kind of convenient. It's like,
The
no, we're not following you, dude. No, go ahead.
the other two details involving hallways randomly is when right after Kimble is freshly shaved and he's kind of stolen some doctor's like a lab coat and he's rushing down the hall
And
and
the
the cop
cop,
comes the other way and he's like I'm looking for a guy who's 6 foot or something,
yeah,
brown
yeah,
hair or whatever.
yeah.
He's like, you see a guy like that wandering around? And Kimball's like, every time I look in the mirror, pal, I'm like, oh my
Except the
god, this is
beard.
so good,
Yeah,
right?
he goes,
The
except the
other
beard.
one, yeah, the other one that I forgot about, but I laughed out loud was the moment when he's escaping. Kimble had gone to the Department of Corrections to
Hmm.
interview the one guy
Yeah.
because he had a prosthetic limb. Turned out it wasn't him.
I love
He's
that guy in
escaping.
there too. Hey
Yeah,
man,
he's
you're
like,
here. Why don't we talk?
got nothing else going on.
Go
But
ahead.
no, he's leaving and Gerard spots him and he begins chasing him.
Hmm.
And then Ford gets ahead and he goes out into the lobby and
Hmm.
there's a bunch of cops there and he
Yeah,
says, "Officers, there's a guy in a blue coat. He's like yelling crazily, waving a gun around, and there's a woman."
and there's a woman. It's like,
And
well,
2 seconds later,
because
Tommy
you said
Jones.
there's a woman, we're gonna get involved. Like he doesn't say there's a woman with him or there's a woman in danger. It's just like, and there's a woman. You
Yeah,
know,
he almost
I,
mutters it. And then Jones comes around the corner just like, "Get that man, get it," and everything, tackle him.
uh,
Oh,
I read recently this week that like Jones did not like. He didn't believe that Gerard would just start shooting in like City Hall there.
yeah.
And I understand that, but I think like the screenwriter Jeb Stewart like really tried to persuade him because he's like, okay, what are the optics here? Because you had no problem shooting that other fugitive, that you just shot down. The taller black guy. I think the character's name was Copeland or something like that. You had no problem shooting that guy down in one seat in cold blood, and then you're having a problem shooting this guy in a public place.
That's weak
That's
sauce
that's
because
weak
the
sauce.
guy
It's a
had
little different.
Right, because Copeland had a U.S. Marshal at
Yeah,
gunpoint
yeah,
and was threatening to blow his head off,
right,
whereas Kimble had just, he
yeah,
was unarmed as far as we knew.
yeah,
The one thing from CinemaSins that I thought was pretty funny was, why didn't Gerard just shoot his foot? Because the foot got
right,
jammed in the
right.
door.
He's a bad shot. He's a bad shot. Um, but I
Yeah,
mean, I love that, like that response that, like, Ford's so good at this. It's just like this everyman response of like, "Ah, I could have just got shot. There's a bullet right in front of me. Um, it's crazy. And then of course he goes into the St. Patrick's Day parade. Again, unscripted, but it's so funny because the train wreck happens, I think, at the end of January, and then like
yeah.
this whole time, like up until really St. Patrick's Day, because that's all in one day. I think, isn't it? Or does the Hilton thing happen the next day? Because it once he's in Chicago, it's all like boom, boom, boom.
Well, I mean, there might be some time lapse there because he has to go find he gets the money from
Right,
Nicholas,
right,
then he
right.
has to go find an apartment.
Yeah,
You get the feeling he's probably looked at other places. He's gotta
right.
sign a lease. Like, they skip a lot of paperwork in this
I
movie, is what
guess
I'm
I
saying.
guess the moment from City Hall, I mean, is like it's all kind of boom, boom, boom.
Mm.
They're tracking him down, but um, yeah, I mean, I I just love that scene at the pharmaceutical convention. It's like I don't know. I like scenes in movies where like the climax is like in a big kind of like dinner or auditorium or something, and it's like, you did this, and the guys at the podium who's guilty, and or guy or girl, they can't go anywhere. They're like, oh, security, this guy's clearly, it's like there's always, oh,
But
Dr. Kimble, oh.
but I like the way that Davis put us into that scene as if we were people at, like,
At
the table, like,
yeah,
tables 10 spots back
yeah,
from where the action is happening, because it's not like Ford and the other guy are mic'd up. The one
no,
guy's at a mic because he's at the podium, but as
yeah,
he comes down, they start to go settle this thing off stage, you get that sound. We've all been in, like, big halls or something where
right,
someone is their mic's not working, so you can hear they're saying something, but it's very
right,
echoey and kinda, like, faint. They do
yeah,
that same thing
hmm.
here. We're privy to it, but you can just imagine people in the back like, "What the hell's going on up there?"
And it's funny because there is somewhere in the room there's a guy with a spotlight. And he's following both of them, because once Kimball gets to the stage, they go off stage, and he because Nichols wants to get out of there, and the spotlight's going, nope, let's stay on these guys.
Well,
Yeah,
I think it might be, a callback to the opening credits, the weirdest opening credits I've seen in any film because it says, "Harrison
I know. And it
Ford."
and it, and it, and it, and it, it like flips the letters like forward, and it's like Tommy Lee Jones, and then they do the same thing with the Fugitive, and then later on, again, these opening credits kind of drag out, and then it's just like at the bottom, Julia Moore,
Yeah.
this and that. It's like, um, yeah, this at what the other bizarre thing, the funny bizarre thing at the end. There's fireworks in the sky at the end. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like we're right by on Michigan Avenue, I think, and like the camera's like going up, and it's like there's fireworks. Now again, this is August. This is around a time where maybe this is coming from Navy Pier or whatever, but
But in the movie continuity, it's supposed to
why
be
would it
like St.
be?
Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
Well,
why would
maybe
it be?
maybe the whole thing is just like a running joke of Chicago because the memes of Chicago weather, it's
Right,
like,
right,
you
right.
get summer, spring, fall, and winter all in one afternoon.
It's like why are there? And I'm like, why did Andy Davis decide that? Like, I'll have to listen to the commentary. It's like, yeah, these fireworks, we added these in post, and I don't know, but
A commentary like you might find here on this 4K
oh,
Blu-ray from Warner Brothers, yeah.
nice transition there.
Yeah.
I have to say, I don't know if
Look,
you watched it with the intro.
no.
So I chose to watch it with intro. Watch that intro because it is terrible. It's a really bad intro. It's not like a recently shot like intro, of course, because Ford's busy playing Red Hulk or something. But uh, you know, it's like they edited, one of the editors edited like something from like a DVD special features stuff where it's like clips. It's not a real intro to a movie really. It's like clips from a conversation from a DVD special features from like whatever the 90s, and it's so awkward and weird. It's like there is no reason. Just start the movie. I don't know.
Well, it's not as bad as. Did you ever listen to the Cameron Crowe Say Anything audio commentary?
No, I have not. That's pretty bad.
I've never heard it all the way through because it's so long that I stopped after 40 minutes because when you play the movie with commentary, this is on a Blu-ray or DVD from like forever ago, so I don't know if they kept it. But when you press play with commentary, it's like a slideshow of stills from the movie, and it's like, "Hi, I'm Cameron Crowe. I'm here to talk about Say Anything," and he keeps talking about the movie
Even
before
before
the
the
movie
movie
starts.
started?
Yes,
So
I
it's an so
turned
it
it off
literally
after
is
a
an
while.
intro.
Yes, but it's
Yeah.
him talking. Yeah, it's
Here's
like,
my Polaroids from the set.
but you don't see him. It's just like a PowerPoint presentation of the movie, and he's
Right.
talking over it. It's very strange, but yeah,
So
I
funny.
love that movie, and I love Cameron Crowe, but even I have my limits.
I hear
But yeah. Anyway, speaking of limits, I think. Well, first of all, I think I've successfully disguised my identity.
you. Yeah, man, I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
Feels weird.
yeah,
I don't
your
like
wife's
this.
gonna be like, I thought you were just doing a podcast.
No, she knew about it.
She's
She
like,
didn't try and talk me down from the ledge. I think she's ready to see me look a little different.
yeah.
But anyway, thank you, David, for talking about The Fugitive with me.
Yeah,
I love this movie. I
it's great.
appreciate this more than I ever have, honestly.
It's a great movie. Yeah, it's fun. I don't know what else really to say about it. Except I'm kind of surprised if people haven't seen it, but maybe I shouldn't be. But
I Let me ask you this, because I was shaving while you were talking about The Fugitive, the TV show. So I was a little distracted. Um,
didn't want to
how
cut
would you
yourself.
say this? Well, yeah. How would you say this stacks up? Like, would you recommend seeking out the TV show and watching it as a companion piece, or is this such a unique to its own, it's its own thing aside from the character names
It is. It is
that they stand on their
thankfully.
own?
It is thankfully its own own thing. I mean, you again. It's taking the overall conceit of the show and kind of compartmentalizing it and shrinking it down to a 2-hour blockbuster. Um, I would say if you're curious about it, it's worth checking out. Um, uh, a couple episodes or so. The from I've never seen the final episode because the final episode was huge, big ratings. Like up until then, the only show that had a final episode that had more, big viewership or ratings was the final episode of MASH. But
Right.
like the final episode of Fugitive was him actually, finding the one armed man and bringing him to justice. But yeah, I mean, David Jansen is a pretty good actor. It's just he's more of like one of those like journeyman type actors.
Mm.
He's there to do his part and everything. Um, Funny thing in the courtroom scene in this movie, I learned that David Jansen's mother is sitting in the courtroom scene when right behind Kimble when they're playing the 911 call that from his wife. But it's like, how would you know that without knowing that? It's like,
It's
but,
trivia.
but it's fun. Then if I don't know if I didn't do enough research, like I didn't know like when, like why is his mom there and not David Jansen? Did he die before this movie came out? I don't know, but I'm
Did
sure
you find out the answer?
I did not, but I
Oh,
guess I could look right now, but I'm not gonna.
no. We'll leave that to the you tell
That's right.
us, and we're not
That's
going to
right.
look it up. You leave a
That's right.
comment and tell
Yeah.
us if David Jansen, if he's
Yeah.
not still alive, was he when this movie was made, and why is his
Yeah.
mom there for some reason?
Yeah, it's like some kind of, hey mom, I could get you in a movie.
Was it David Jansen in disguise as his own mother because he was actually on the run from the cops?
That would be very Norman Bates of him.
Ugh. All right. Well, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, thank you again for hanging out and talking The Fugitive and and putting up with me shaving. Folks out there, if you liked this show, give it a like and a thumbs up and a subscription and all that stuff. And be sure and follow David Fowley at Keeping It Real. All his info is below. If you haven't seen The Fugitive, fix that right away. You can the 4K from Warner Brothers is pretty nifty. It looks great. There's a bunch of extras on it. Although you can probably avoid the intro from what David is recommending.
Yes.
And now I got to watch it just so I can cringe some more. But anyway, I think that's about it. We have found this man, and by this man, I mean the discussion about The Fugitive. So till next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks very much and take care. Why did I point? That was so stupid.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're pointing because it's a Harrison Ford movie. I didn't kill my wife. You find that man. He's pointing to Ron Dean.
Get off my podcast.
Yeah, so you're leaving.